I want you to picture a car, specifically a 1969 Mercury Montego. Turquoise and white, heavy steel, low to the ground, a classic American car.
Right. From an era where suspension meant you were sort of floating down the highway, not built for off-roading.
Exactly.
Okay.
Now, I want you to place that car on what's basically a cow path in the Sierra Nevada mountains.
Right.
A road that is, it's just ruts and rocks and mud.
In the middle of winter.
In the middle of winter, it's pitch black, there's snow on the ground, and yet when this car is finally found, the undercarriage is pristine.
Pristine.
There isn't a scratch on the muffler, there's no mud caked on the side panels, and that physical impossibility is where this whole story just breaks my brain.
It's the detail that keeps you up at night.
Yeah.
It really is. You're talking about the case of the Yuba County Five. And that car, just sitting there quietly in the snow of the Plumas National Forest, it's the silent witness to a tragedy that just defies almost every logical explanation we try to apply to it.
Yeah, we've covered disappearances before, but this one, it feels different. It's not just that 5 men vanished. It's that they vanished while seemingly doing everything right, up until the moment they did everything wrong.
Well said.
The timeline makes sense until it doesn't.
Yeah.
The physical evidence is all there, but it contradicts itself at every turn.
It's often called the American Dyatlov Pass for a reason. And, like that incident in Russia, you have a group of young people who flee a place of safety, in this case, a working heated car,
A perfectly good car.
into conditions that they are absolutely not equipped to survive. And the question isn't just what happened, but why? Why did their survival instincts seem to just invert? Why walk into the dark when you have a heater? Why starve when you're surrounded by food?
So today, we're going to strip this all the way down. We're not just going to look at the timeline of that Friday, February 24th, 1978. We need to look at the mechanical limitations of that Mercury Montego. We need to look at the pharmacology of the medication one of the men was taking.
And we need to look at the psychology of 5 men who were referred to by their families simply as the boys.
That label, the boys. It's crucial context, isn't it?
It is. We're in the Sacramento Valley, specifically Chico and Yuba City. It's 1978. There's no GPS, no cell phones. If you get lost, you are truly, completely lost.
So let's start with the group dynamic. Because to understand why they might have made these decisions up on the mountain, you have to understand who they were down in the valley. They weren't just random friends. They were a unit.
A very, very tight-knit unit. You've got Ted Weyer, Jack Hewitt, Bill Sterling, Jack Madruga, and Gary Mathias. They ranged in age from 24 to 32, but they were bound together by a shared vulnerability and some shared interests.
Ted Weyer is someone I want to focus on early because his role becomes so tragic later in this timeline. He was 32, the oldest, described as a gentle giant. But he had a cognitive disability that, it manifested in a lack of what we would probably call common sense.
Common sense is a broad term, but there's a specific example here that really grounds it. There was a documented incident where Ted's house caught on fire.
A real fire.
A real fire. The ceiling was literally burning, and Ted refused to leave his bed. His reasoning was that he had work the next morning and he needed his sleep.
Oh, wow.
He had to be physically dragged out of the burning house.
That's a terrifying level of rigid thinking. It suggests that once a rule or a routine was set in his mind, like, I need sleep for work, he couldn't prioritize a life-or-death emergency over it.
Precisely. He lacked that ability to triage information. If the routine was sleep, he slept. And this becomes incredibly relevant when we look at why they might have stayed in a trailer while starving to death.
Okay, so then you have Jack Hewitt. He's 24. He was very attached to Ted. Where Ted went, Jack went.
They were inseparable.
He also had a mild intellectual disability. But there's a detail about him that really sticks out to me. He hated telephones.
He had a phobia of them. A genuine phobia. He would rely on his mother to make any calls for him. So, think about a scenario where the group is lost or in trouble.
Right.
If they passed a payphone, and we know there were opportunities early in the night, Jack Hewitt would likely be the very last person to suggest using it.
And then there's Bill Sterling, 29.
Yeah.
A very religious man, very kind. His family called him a slow learner. But he was functional, just gentle. He wasn't a leader.
And in a crisis, group dynamics almost always default to a leader. So if Bill wasn't the leader and Jack Hewitt wasn't, and Ted lacked that emergency override switch in his brain, the leadership fell to the other two.
Jack Madruga, 30 years old. He's the driver.
Yeah.
He is the owner of that turquoise 1969 Mercury Montego. He was an Army veteran. And from everything I read, he wasn't just fond of his car, he was obsessed with it.
It was his prized possession. working class guys in 1978, that car was their identity. Madruga did not let other people drive it. He did not leave it unlocked. He certainly would not take it joyriding on a mountain trail. He was, in that regard, the responsible one.
Which brings us to Gary Mathias, 25 years old, also an Army veteran. But Gary is the outlier here. He didn't have the same intellectual disabilities the others had. He had schizophrenia.
And this is where we need to be very, very specific about the medical reality of 1978. By this point, Gary was a success story. He had had a rough patch in the Army over in West Germany, got a psychiatric discharge, and he had some violent episodes in his past. But at this time, in February of 78, he was stable.
He was working.
He was working for his stepfather's gardening business. His own doctors called him a sterling success case.
But staying a success case required maintenance. It required something.
It required strict medication adherence. He was taking stelazine, that's trifloprazine, and also cogentin, which is benzatropine.
I want to pause on the stelazine. We often just gloss over drug names in stories like this, but there's a physiological side effect of that specific drug that might just change how we view the entire timeline of death here.
Absolutely. The phenothiazine-type antipsychotics, like stelazine, have a really potent effect on the hypothalamus. That's the part of the brain that it acts as your body's thermostat. It regulates temperature.
So it's not just a mental thing.
No, it's physical. If you're on high doses of this medication, your body literally loses the ability to regulate its own heat. You don't shiver effectively. You don't recognize cold in the same way.
So if Gary Mathias is exposed to freezing temperatures, he is physically at a disadvantage compared to the others, like right away.
He is prone to hypothermia much, much faster. And arguably worse, he might not feel the warning signs until it's far too late. So you have this group where the most street-smart member, the one who doesn't have an intellectual disability, is chemically compromised against the very environment they are about to enter.
So Friday, February 24th. The mood is high. They play for the Gateway Gators, a basketball team supported by a local program for the disabled. And they have a huge game the next day.
A huge game. The Special Olympics tournament, winners get a free week in Los Angeles. For these guys, this was the Super Bowl. They had their uniforms laid out on their beds. They asked their parents to wake them up early.
This is so important because it establishes intent. There is zero indication they planned to run away. There's no indication they wanted to go on some kind of adventure. They wanted to play basketball the next morning.
Right. The motivation is purely go to Chico, watch the UC Davis game, come straight home, get to sleep, and play. Simple as that.
So they all pile into Madruga's Montego. They drive the 50 miles north to Chico State University. They watch the game. UC Davis wins. They leave the gym. Everything is completely normal.
And we can track them to a specific place, Bears Market in downtown Chico. It's just before 10 p.m. The clerk working that night actually remembered them, and she was annoyed because she wanted to close up for the night. And these 5 guys walk in at the last minute.
And we know it was them because of what they bought. It wasn't survival gear. It wasn't anything for a long trip.
No, it was Hostess pies, sodas, cartons of milk. It's snack food for the ride home. It is the behavior of 5 guys who think they're going to be in their own beds in an hour.
They walk out of that store. They get in the car. They should have driven south, hit Highway 99, and gone straight back to Yuba City. That's a straight shot.
Yeah.
Flat valley driving.
Instead, they end up 70 miles away, high up, deep in the Plumas National Forest.
Let's talk about that drive for a second. To get from downtown Chico to the Oroville-Quincy Road, that's not just a wrong turn.
No.
You have to drive a significant distance, pass multiple signs, and gain thousands of feet in elevation. It's a conscious choice, or a series of very, very wrong choices.
And you cross the snow line. In February, in the Sierras, that transition is stark. You go from the valley floor, which is cool but dry, up into legitimate alpine winter.
So let's go back to the car. The Mercury in Montego is found on February 28th. A ranger spots it. It's stuck in a snowdrift.
Stuck is a very generous term. The official investigation noted that the snow wasn't deep enough to trap a car like that permanently.
What does that mean?
It means 5 healthy young men, and remember, Ted Weir was a big, strong guy. They could have pushed that car out. Easily.
But they didn't even try. Or if they did, they must have given up almost instantly.
And the car itself was fine. The engine was fine. It started right up when the police hotwired it. The gas tank was a quarter full. They had heat. They had a radio. They had shelter.
But the undercarriage, just can't get past this detail. You said the road was a mess.
The Oroville-Quincy Road is a mountain dirt road. In the winter, it's all ruts, potholes, washboard surfaces. It is not designed for a 1969 sedan with low clearance.
I've driven cars from that era. The suspension it's soft. You hit a pothole at any kind of speed, you bottom out, you scrape the oil pan, you dent the muffler.
And yet the police found no scrapes, no dents, no mud packed into the wheel wells in a way that suggested, spinning tires or a real struggle.
This implies they drove incredibly slowly. Painfully slow.
That's the only physical explanation. They must have been creeping up that mountain, carefully navigating every single bump.
Which completely contradicts the theory that they were fleeing someone. If you were being chased, you don't worry about your muffler, you floor it.
Exactly. If they were running from some kind of threat back in Chico, the car would show signs of reckless driving. It didn't. This suggests a calm, deliberate ascent.
Sure.
Or someone else was driving who knew that road intimately.
But Madruga wouldn't let anyone else drive his car.
Unless he was coerced. Or unless the threat was actually inside the car with them. But again, there's no physical evidence of a struggle inside the car either. The snacks were there. The wrappers were just loose.
The window was down.
The driver's side window was rolled down. The car was unlocked. And the keys? The keys were gone.
So Madruga, the man who obsesses over this car, leaves it unlocked with the window open in the middle of a snowstorm.
It makes no sense. It suggests a sudden exit. Or a very confused exit. Why would you roll the window down in freezing temperatures? Maybe to hear something. Maybe to talk to someone outside.
Or maybe the car was getting hot inside for some reason, but it was winter.
It's a total anomaly. And the missing keys are crucial. Did Madruga take them out of habit? Did someone else take them to prevent them from leaving? We just don't know.
So the car is abandoned. The search starts, but a massive blizzard hits immediately after the car is found, burying any potential footprints, any tracks. The parents are going out of their minds with worry.
And it's during this initial phase, before the snow has a chance to melt, that we get the testimony of Joseph Shantz.
This part of the story is the stuff of nightmares.
Joseph Shantz isn't part of the group. He is just a guy from Sacramento who was up there checking snow levels for a ski trip. He drives up that same road earlier that evening around 5:30 p.m., and he gets his own car stuck.
And then he has a heart attack.
A mild one, but it was enough to incapacitate him. He's in severe pain. He's stuck in his car, engine running for heat, and the night is falling. He is completely alone on that mountain.
And then he sees them.
About 6 hours later, so roughly the time we think the boys would have arrived, he sees headlights pull up behind him.
He must have thought, thank God, I'm saved.
He did. He sees a group of people. Now, in his pain, and we have to account for the fact that he was in medical distress, he thought he saw a woman holding a baby. Investigators now think this was a hallucination caused by the pain and the shadows. But he was adamant about the group. He saw a group.
And he calls for help.
He screams for help, and the reaction he gets is just silence. The lights on the other car go out. The talking he heard just stops.
They see a man in distress, and they turn off their lights and go silent.
And then later, Sean sees flashlights moving around outside, so he calls out again. And the flashlights immediately go out.
This is the behavior of people who are hiding.
Or people who are terrified. Remember, Shunz is in his car. He's probably looking frantic. Does he look like a threat to them? Or if the boys are in some state of confusion, does a stranger shouting in the dark trigger a fear response?
But Ted Weir, his mother, insisted he was the guy who would help anyone. He dragged a friend out of a bad situation once. Why would Ted ignore a plea for help?
Unless Ted wasn't in charge. Or unless Ted was being told by someone else to stay quiet. It implies that for whatever reason they had for being on that mountain, they did not want to be found. They preferred the darkness and the cold over interacting with Joseph Shantz.
Shantz eventually gets better. His gas runs out, and he walks out. He passes the Montego on his way. It's empty.
And the boys are gone into the woods.
So we fast forward. The snow finally melts. It's June 4th. Months have gone by. Group of motorcyclists is riding about 19.4 miles away from the car, deeper into the wilderness.
And they find a U.S. Forest Service trailer. It's a staging area for forestry crews, a place they'd stay.
And inside, they find the body of Ted Weir.
The scene inside that trailer is it's devastating because of what it implies about the length of his suffering. Ted is on a bed, and he's been wrapped in 8 sheets, like a shroud, and he's emaciated.
How much weight had he lost?
He lost nearly 100 pounds. He went from over 200 pounds to barely 100. This kind of weight loss, it takes a long time.
And based on the beard growth, how long do they think he was alive in there?
The coroner estimated between 8 and 13 weeks.
3 months. He was alive in that trailer for 3 months while his family was out there searching for him.
It is entirely possible. He essentially starved to death and died of hypothermia.
But the trailer was stocked.
Yeah.
This is the part of the story that just makes you want to scream at the past.
The trailer had a food locker outside, a big one. It contained dehydrated military-grade meals. There was enough food in there to feed all 5 men for a year.
And they didn't touch it.
They did find another, smaller shed, and they opened that one. They ate about 36 cans of sea rations from it. But once those were gone, they stopped. They never broke the seal on the main locker with all the food.
But why? You are starving. You are literally dying. There is food right there.
This brings us right back to the psychology of the group. We talked about Ted's rigidity, staying in bed during a fire because of work. Now, apply that same kind of thinking to the whole group. They're in a government trailer. That locker is government property.
You think they didn't eat because they were afraid of getting in trouble for stealing?
It's called the good soldier theory. Madruga and Matthias were army men. You don't steal government property, you don't break locks. And for men with intellectual disabilities or very rigid cognitive processing, the rule do not steal might not have an override for unless you are literally dying.
That is just heartbreaking. They followed the rules right to their graves.
And it gets worse. There was a large butane tank outside. It had a valve. All they had to do was turn that valve, and the trailer would have had central heating. They never turned it on.
They froze to death in a shelter that had a heating system.
Yes. And there were matches. There were paperback novels that could have been used as kindling to start a fire in the fireplace. The books were untouched.
So Ted is found in the trailer. Where are the others?
The search radiates out from there. The next day, they find remains about 11.4 miles from where the car was on the road that leads up to the trailer.
And this is Jack Madruga and Bill Sterling.
Yes. Madruga's body had been heavily scavenged by animals over the months. Sterling was mostly just skeletal remains, scattered over a small area.
What happened to them?
Hypothermia. The prevailing theory is that they never made it to the trailer. They died on the long walk up.
11 miles in the snow, in dress shoes and sneakers.
It's a death march. And usually with hypothermia, one person succumbs first. They get tired, they get confused, they just want to sit down and rest. The other person tries to help, maybe sits with them, and then they both fall asleep and don't wake up. It's very likely Sterling and Madruga died together right there on the road.
Then there's Jack Hewitt.
His own father found him. Can you imagine that, being part of the search party and finding your own son's remains?
There was he.
About 2 miles northeast of the trailer, so not on the main road. His backbone was found under a manzanita bush. His skull was found about 300 feet away from that.
Identified by his jeans.
And his shoes. He was close to the trailer, but maybe he went out looking for wood. Or maybe he got disoriented and tried to walk for help and went the wrong way.
That leaves Gary Matthias, the man with the schizophrenia, the man on the medication.
Gary is the ghost in this story. His body has never been found.
But we know he was in the trailer.
We know he was there because his tennis shoes were found inside the trailer.
And Ted Weir's shoes were missing.
Right. Ted had large feet. The implication is that Gary likely took Ted's bigger, sturdier leather shoes because his own sneakers were probably wet and useless in the snow. This suggests Gary was the strongest one for the longest time. He was mobile enough to swap shoes.
And the sea rations. They were opened with a P38 can opener.
Which is a small, hinged metal device. You have to know how to use it. It's an army tool. Ted Weir likely wouldn't know how, but Gary or Madruga would. And since Madruga died on the road, it suggests Gary was the one opening the cans for Ted.
So Gary is in the trailer, and he's caring for Ted.
For a while, yes. It seems that way. But then, at some point, Gary's medication runs out.
Yeah, we talked about the withdrawal effect.
It's not just withdrawal, it's the return of his psychosis. Without the antipsychotics and under the extreme stress of starvation and cold and isolation, Gary would have deteriorated mentally.
And his temperature regulation is already broken because of the residual effects of the drug.
Exactly. So eventually, at some point, Gary leaves. Maybe he thinks he can walk out for help. Maybe he's hallucinating. We don't know. But he puts on Ted's shoes and walks out into the snow, and he is never seen again.
I want to look at the why. Why did they go up that road in the first place? There's the snowcat theory.
This is one of the most plausible theories for the initial ascent. The day before the men disappeared, a U.S. Forest Service snowcat had gone up that road to clear heavy snow off the roof of that very same trailer.
So there would have been tracks in the snow.
Not just tracks, hard-packed tracks,
Mm.
a clear path. If the boys were confused, or if they had made a wrong turn and were just looking for a way out, they might have seen those tracks in their headlights.
Yeah, and they thought, this is a road, it's been plowed, it must lead somewhere.
Exactly. It must lead back to civilization. So they follow the tracks. The tracks lead them deeper and deeper into the forest, 19 miles in until they end right at the trailer.
So they didn't know they were walking into a dead end. They thought they were walking toward safety.
That makes the most logical sense of their actions. They weren't just wandering aimlessly through the wilderness. They were following a path.
What about the wrong turn theory? You mentioned that Gary Mathias had friends in a town called Forbestown.
It's possible. It's possible they decided to try and visit them late at night. They miss a turn near Oroville, and they end up on the mountain road by mistake.
But again, the car. Why not just turn around when the road gets bad? A 69 Montego is not a Jeep.
That's always the sticking point. Why commit to the mountain? Why keep going up? Unless they were forced to.
But there is no evidence of another car. No paint transfer on the Montego. No other tire tracks found initially.
There is one other theory, or rather a sighting that we haven't touched on yet. The Brownsville sighting?
This one is very controversial.
It is. Brownsville is a small town about 30 miles from where the car was found. On March 3rd, so this is days after the official disappearance, a woman working at a local store claimed she saw 4 of the men.
4 of them alive.
Alive. She described a red pickup truck. She said 2 men were outside using a phone booth. She identified them as Hewitt and Sterling, and 2 came inside the store.
And she identified them.
She said they had big eyes, and she described the man we assume was weird, eating burritos and chocolate milk just voraciously.
Big eyes. Sounds like shock. Or maybe starvation.
The store owner backed her up. He confirmed the description of the men. The police at the time actually found the witness to be credible.
But if they were in Brownsville on March 3rd, why on earth did they go back up to the trailer to die?
That's the problem. The forensic evidence, Ted's beard growth, the severe weight loss, it all fits the timeline of them getting trapped in the trailer and staying there the whole time. If they were in a red truck in Brownsville, who was driving them? Where did that truck come from? Where did it go?
So it could have been a simple case of mistaken identity.
It's the most likely answer. But the detail about Weir's eating habits, eating anything he could get his hands on, that is uncannily accurate to how his family described his behavior. It's a loose end that just doesn't fit with the rest of the puzzle.
It really feels like we are looking at a tragedy of cascading errors, a wrong turn, a bad decision to keep driving, a decision to leave the car, a decision to ignore Joseph Shones, a decision not to eat the food or turn on the heat.
It's a cascade failure. That's the perfect term for it. Each decision on its own might have been survivable, but you string them all together. The lack of winter clothes, the cognitive disabilities, the medication issues, this possible ingrained fear of authority. It just created a trap they couldn't escape from.
I keep going back to Ted Weir. In my mind, he's the last man standing.
It is the most haunting part of this entire story.
Can you imagine being him? You're alone in that trailer, your friends are gone, you're wrapped in sheets because your feet are frostbitten and possibly gangrenous. You are in pain. You are hungry.
And you're just waiting.
He had to have been waiting for Gary to come back. Or for his parents. For anyone.
The isolation, the silence of a forest in winter it's absolute. There's no traffic noise, just the wind and the trees. For weeks and weeks.
And the ultimate irony is that if he had just turned that one valve on the propane tank, not only would he have had heat to survive, but the noise, the gas, maybe the smell, it might have alerted a searcher.
Or if he had just started a fire in the fireplace, smoke is a signal, a huge visible signal, but he just lay there in the dark and the cold.
What do you think ultimately happened if you had to put all the pieces together into one single narrative?
I think they went for a drive after the game, maybe to see those friends, maybe just to talk and unwind. They missed a turn. They got onto that mountain road. They saw the snowcat tracks, and they thought it was a safe, cleared route. So they followed it. They drove until the snow got too deep, or they just got too scared of the terrain.
So they abandoned the car.
They get out, and they see the tracks continuing on foot. They think the plow went this way, so help must be this way. They start to walk. Madruga and Sterling die on the way. The other 3, Weir, Hewitt, and Mathias, they reach the trailer.
They break in.
They break the window, they get inside. Gary, being the most capable, opens the sea rations. They eat what's there, but the cold gets to them. Hewitt wanders off or dies nearby. Gary's psychosis returns as his medication wears off, and he wanders off into the wilderness. And Ted is left alone, unable to walk and unable to break that mental barrier of stealing the food in the locked shed. And he just fades away.
It's a story about how vulnerable we really are. We think we can handle anything, but you take away our infrastructure, you add a little cold and confusion, and reason just, it falls apart.
And it highlights how society's structures, like the rule to not touch government property, can be so deeply ingrained that they can actually override our most basic survival instincts, especially in the most vulnerable among us.
The Yuba County Five. It remains one of those cases where the answers are right there in front of us, but they don't satisfy us because they're just so profoundly tragic.
We want a villain, we want a monster or a neat conspiracy, but the villain here was the cold and confusion and human fragility.
And a series of small, quiet misunderstandings that compounded into an absolute disaster.
Exact.
There's so much more to this case, the specific search grids, the family dynamics, but we have to stop here for today. I just want to leave you with that image of the car again. Pristine in the snow, a perfect capsule of safety that they just walked away from.
It serves as a reminder, I think, to always question our own decisions when the pressure is on. Are we really thinking clearly, or are we just following a track because it happens to be there?
Thanks for listening.